This is Weesperstraat in Amsterdam. It's an unusually wide road, at least by Amsterdam standards. This road was built in the 1960s during a time when Amsterdam was inviting American traffic planners as consultants in an attempt to reinvent itself as a car-friendly city. The 1960s were not a good time for cities, and a lot of people's homes were bulldozed to build this road. Every day, this road brings in about 27,000 cars right through the center of the city, so they did what any reasonable municipality would do. They blocked it off to car traffic. There are many streets in the Netherlands where access for cars has been cut off. This is called a knip, literally a cut. In English, urban planners call these modal filters because they filter what kind of traffic can go through. Typically, people walking and cycling can pass without issues, while car drivers can not. Public transit and emergency vehicles are always allowed as well. And sometimes delivery vehicles are permitted, usually during certain times of the day. This is the standard method that the Netherlands uses to prevent people from driving through a neighborhood, and they make the streets safer and more enjoyable for everyone who lives there. So these modal filters are really nothing unusual for Amsterdam, at least for streets. But Weesperstraat is not a street, it is a road. While streets are destinations, places where people live, work, and shop, roads like this one have only one purpose: to move as many motor vehicles as possible. You can watch my video about stroads to learn more about the purposes of streets versus roads. So this knip is a bold move, even for Amsterdam, because it's the first one to happen on a major road. They have also blocked off some parallel routes to prevent rat running, where drivers cut through adjacent neighborhoods to avoid traffic. And in each knip, there is a portable barrier with someone working there to redirect any drivers who try to go through. Right now, this is just a test. The municipality has been planning this for years, but they wanted to do it right, by carefully studying the impact on traffic, noise, and pollution. So, Weesperstraat is currently only closed to car traffic for 6 weeks, and only from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., and the city is studying the results during that time. As you approach the gates on Weesperstraat, the road goes from 2 lanes down to 1, with these flower planters taking up the center lane. This looks kinda ridiculous, of course, but there's only so much you can do to make a car sewer look pretty for 6 weeks. In the center of the road, there is this little pavilion with some artificial grass and picnic tables. And community events are being held here during the project. This is being done to help people visualize what a future redesign of this space could look like, and to really highlight just how much space is currently devoted to moving cars. There are currently no plans for a permanent design, but the municipality has published a few examples of what the road could look like in the future. Of course, emergency vehicles are always allowed through. Emergency vehicles are being slowed by the gates, but on the flip side, they're not getting stuck in traffic, and there will be fewer car crashes too. I'm really curious to see the data on emergency response times through this area before and after the knip. To be honest though, I'm kind of annoyed that these gates are needed at all, because the only reason they're even there in the first place is because of entitled motorists. When Oslo blocked off part of their city centre to through traffic, they had to install gates with expensive cameras to read license plates, which is really frustrating. None of this should be necessary, but it is, because there's a handful of drivers who think they're more important than everyone else. In order to even get here, all of these drivers needed to ignore several signs telling them to turn around. On the bright side, the first thing you immediately notice when coming here is that it is so much quieter. I've been through this area many times over the past few years, and it is always very loud and unpleasant. But now, you can actually hear other things beyond the constant roar of motor vehicles. Just another reminder that cities aren't loud, cars are loud, and cities without cars are quiet. And ultimately, Amsterdam is planning to become a city with a lot fewer cars. The long-term plan for Amsterdam is to become a nearly car-free city. And having tens of thousands of motor vehicles coming into the city via this road runs counter to that plan. Especially when all of those cars move less than a quarter as many people as the subway that runs directly under this road. Subways are a lot better than roads at moving large numbers of people. And there are plenty of alternatives available for people from out of town, such as trains, but also Park and Ride, which are car garages on the periphery of the city where people can park their cars for only €1 per day if they take public transit into the city center. The city has provided many carrots, but eventually they'll need the sticks if they are ever going to become a nearly car-free city. So the issue is not if Weesperstraat becomes car-free, it's when. And it's clear that the Amsterdam City Council wants that to be sooner rather than later. But nevertheless, this is still a pretty major step, and I am genuinely impressed that the City Council has done this, because everybody knows this will cause a lot of traffic and confusion in the short term, and the right-wingers will be all over it. And of course, they did not disappoint. Right from day one, every right-wing journalist, politician, and $8 blue check was immediately claiming that the KNIP was a colossal failure. And many of them have been very, let's say, loose with the truth. Oh no, who's going to pick up Grandma? And I totally didn't have to add an extra stop in the middle of the tunnel to create this totally real scenario. Most people choose and need the car. In this part of Amsterdam where 70% of households are car-free. It should be noted that the city is not off-limits to car traffic due to the KNIP, but only to through traffic. All areas accessible by car before are still accessible now, but if you want to go from the north to the south or vice versa, you have to take the highway instead of driving right through the middle of the city. Needless to say, this brought out the people who claim that, actually, this causes more pollution because cars need to go a longer distance and get stuck in traffic. I've heard this argument so many times in Canada as well, and it just makes me laugh. These drivers are always really concerned about the pollution caused by their cars, but only when they're not allowed to drive wherever they want, whenever they want, and as fast as they want. At all other times, they don't give a shit. At least, not enough to actually do anything that makes them drive less. The truth is that Amsterdam has too many cars. It's actually unusual how car-friendly the center of Amsterdam is compared to many other cities in the Netherlands, or even Germany for that matter. And most Amsterdammers are very much in favor of the municipality's plan to build a nearly car-free city. Ultimately, this is yet another example of the age-old problem of the personal convenience of driving for an individual driver coming up against the health, safety, and comfort of the people who live in the area that's being driven through, the vast majority of whom don't even own cars. So, despite what the people who don't live in Amsterdam but think they're entitled to drive through the center of Amsterdam think, at this point, it's too early to say if this KNIP has been a success or a failure. We need to wait for the trial to complete, for the data on traffic, noise, and pollution to be analyzed, and I will make a follow-up video on that when the results are in. Ultimately, it takes time for drivers to adjust to new road layouts, for people to change their travel habits, and for sat-navs to update. Everybody knows this. But as time goes on and traffic patterns change, people start to get used to the cleaner air, quieter city, and safer streets, and they start to forget that the car sewer was ever there. Nobody wants this road through Museumplein to come back, when it looks like this today. The KNIP is definitely not problem-free, of course. The city cut off parallel routes, but there is currently too much traffic going down Kattenburgerstraat, a nearby street, and this is one of the streets that the city is monitoring during the project. The right-wing politicians were very quick to jump on this increase in traffic as a reason to stage protests and to demand that the project be cancelled immediately instead of waiting for 6 weeks. I visited Kattenburgerstraat in the morning rush hour, and I definitely saw a lot of traffic here. Though a few minutes later, it looked like this. I suspect there's an increase in traffic here, but I really don't see how anyone can say that this traffic is so bad that it justifies canceling a 6-week experiment that's been in planning for years. I want to see what the official traffic counts are before and after, especially since we know traffic will be bad at the beginning of the project, and that this street in particular has had bad traffic for years, even without the KNIP. We all knew that right-wing politicians would be calling for the KNIP to be stopped immediately, but ultimately, I don't think these people are actually scared of traffic jams. I think they're scared that this might actually work. that it might make the city safer, cleaner, and more livable for the residents of Amsterdam, and after realizing just how great it was to have all the cars gone, they won't want them to come back. And nothing scares the car lobbyists more than people realizing they'd be better off without them. There's a lot of science that goes into traffic engineering projects, and I think the world could use more orange-pilled engineers building better cities. So if you're interested in a career in mathematics or engineering, I strongly recommend you check out Brilliant.org. I really wish this existed when I studied engineering in university. I could never understand how eigenvectors worked, but after following the course on Brilliant, they seem really straightforward. Turns out I wasn't stupid, the professors just sucked at explaining it. Brilliant, on the other hand, is the best way to learn math and computer science interactively. Brilliant has thousands of lessons, including foundational and advanced mathematics, data science, neural networks, and the mathematics and physics behind engineering, and new lessons are being added monthly. They even have a course on the physics of traffic jams, which is one of those fundamental exercises that every engineer needs to complete. But just don't forget that the only real-world solution to car traffic is viable alternatives to driving. Whether you're in school or starting out a new career, Brilliant is a brilliant way of achieving your goals for learning and improving your skills in math, science, and engineering. You can try Brilliant free for 30 days by signing up at brilliant.org/notjustbikes, and if you decide to keep it, you'll get 20% off an annual subscription. Thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. I'd also like to thank my supporters on Nebula and Patreon who pay me to knip through the crap. If you'd like to support this channel, visit nebula.tv/notjustbikes or patreon.com/notjustbikes.